Okay, so 1984 seems quite overwhelming right now because we are being presented with so many intellectual ideas, themes, and techniques so quickly. It's a lot to take in. Yeah, that's a good point, Luke. So 1984 has great ideas. Like I love that book, right? I love that novel. It's so relevant to the world we live in today as well. You'll often hear people say that's really Orwellian, like that's like George Orwell's book 1984, basically, because he created all of these kind of predictions, if you like, or these visions of a future that was quite dystopian, which in many cases the world seems to be going towards in a way. It's not that grim in terms of the outlook, but a lot of the things he predicted have come true in some parts of the world, i.e., like North Korea. That's like an embodiment of 1984. You should look into that. Yeah, so there's a lot of ideas. You just need to simplify. Here's a good tip for that one. So if you're finding that a text is overwhelming in terms of all the ideas and the intellectual ground that it's covering, simplify it down to a few key points in the plot, right? So what you need to do is step back and say, what is this text about generally? Forget about the ideas. What happens in it? What's it about in the sense of what happens? Okay, in 1984, there's this guy. This is how you need to kind of say it to yourself. You need to be able to say this to yourself or something like this before you can take the next step and think about the deeper concepts. But you need to be able to describe what happens in that way. And then you can start linking the ideas to those plot points, right? So you might have a few plot points, but I would break down the plot points in terms of the problem, the struggle, and the resolution. So if you're looking at 1984, what's the problem? The problem is you've got a character, or you've got individuals, you've got a collective of individuals, really. It's everyone, right? Everyone in this society is not allowed to express themselves freely. Okay, that's the problem. Cool. You can explore the ideas around that, but just start with that basic kind of claim. Okay, your claim is that in 1984, no one is allowed to express themselves freely. Okay, then you start asking yourself, why? Oh, how does that look? Like, how is that enforced? And then you start coming up with examples, and suddenly you're building your first body paragraph. And then for the second body paragraph, you're thinking, okay, well, the second thing that happens in 1984, like in the middle of the story, that character who's one of the individuals who's been oppressed, like everyone else, starting to rebel against Big Brother, against the government, and he does that through psychological and sexual rebellion. Then you can start exploring ideas around that. So there's rebellion through psychological and sexual resistance or rebellion. You could say there's resistance through those types of rebellion, and then you could start unpacking that. Well, what does that look like? How is he rebelling psychologically? And then you start thinking about those elements. And then you think about the last third of the novel, and you think, is the rebellion successful? No, the rebellion's unsuccessful. So the rebellion's unsuccessful. Why? Well, it's unsuccessful because Big Brother has such a level of control, of absolute totalitarian control, that any form of resistance, of rebellion, even psychologically, is able to be observed and countered, right, with force, and with such force that you are ultimately destined to conform ideologically to Big Brother's will. And then you start asking questions around that and further questions, and you go from there. But yeah, split the text up into a few key plot points, beginning, middle, end. Then think about, well, what ideas were explored in the beginning mainly? What are the main ideas in the middle? What are the main ideas in the end? And then ask yourself all of like the hows and the whys, and break that down into little components, find examples, and you'll start to see a nice 3-paragraph essay coming to life.